also doing a 64-bit Debian version, and they're going to continue doing that.
Did you put it in the news?
I put it in there, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't put it in the show notes. I put it in the news.
We'll put it in the show notes. We're happy to hear about stuff like that.
What in the world is
What's
that?
what's the someone's got a
It's 2002 in somebody's house. I'm waiting on it
sound
to
like
say
a music box.
no. I'm waiting on it to say you have mail. All right, we're streaming, so to heck with it. Is everybody else seeing what I'm seeing? And me and Majid and Eric are in tiny little boxes on the top.
Good grief!
And the two of
Whoever
you
put-
are in two big boxes.
Yeah. Give me a minute. I'm just pasting it in, and then I'm gonna format it. That was my plan.
I'm on the top in one of the small boxes, and you
Yeah.
guys are on the big boxes on the bottom.
I guess I need to just not care about shit like that.
Oh well.
I'm not sure it makes a difference. I mean, unless it's like some sort of integral part of the layout, but
I need people to see this.
What?
oh,
Yeah.
that's why. Okay.
Don't make fun of me. You guys got silly little shit too.
Reno?
I have no silly little shit.
Mars, if I just cut and paste this in, can you format it correctly for me?
I'll manage.
Oh, show notes.
Bill, if we didn't make fun of you, how would you know that we liked you?
That's not what my mom said when I was growing up. She said if they make fun of me, you don't need them. They're not your friends.
What the blank? All right.
She also
I can
told
do
you
that.
you were the handsomest boy.
And I am. Thank you. Good day, Mark. Good to see you.
God.
What's the matter?
Not
Okay,
working.
Moss?
No, it's not okay. He did something. I tried to fix it. It made it worse, and I can't go back.
Take a deep breath. We'll keep at it.
What are you talking about on the notes?
Yep.
All right, let me look at it.
I mean, I'm just
He put in
cutting
a
and
heading.
pasting.
I tried. He did a heading. He had put in the link. I tried to move the link into link under the heading. And
Okay, let me put the.
now we just have the link in bold, and I can't. There's no back button because apparently we were both doing the same thing at the same time, and it doesn't like that.
Okay. Let me see if I can do anything.
mintCast unplugged. Join the
Oh
chaos.
Lord, look at the size of that.
Try Control Shift V when you paste.
Okay.
Or just
See,
type
what
it
I
out.
always do is I just paste it into a text editor and then paste it from there.
I think that's
Control
what that's-
Shift V essentially does the same thing.
Okay, now stop right there, Majid.
Okay, I'm not going to do anything more. I'm stopping now.
Don't do anything. I am now doing this to grab the link and doing this to insert hyperlink. Why does it say separate edition?
Yeah, that's what confused
There we
me
go.
too. Uh-oh.
There we go. Ah,
Because it
That's
sounded
what it
like
is.
they were
Okay.
saying they were going to
there
just
you go.
they were going to move the oh, so now Legit gets to be on the bottom. Is that all you got to do is
Did you really want to be a bottom, Bill?
I do.
There is no link for the OMG Ubuntu,
It's easier to fuck up that way.
Bill.
Huh?
You put in a GNOME story from OMG Ubuntu with no link.
Who did? I didn't put any news in.
No.
Well, I
actually,
didn't put that in.
There's
I
a couple
put
of
in
them without
Siri.
links.
Yeah, we don't have links.
There's a link right in the.
Oh, there's the link there for the Fedora story.
There was a link, and somebody must have removed it. So I will put the link back.
Give us a little mic gain there, Eric, if you would please.
Is that any better?
It's a little better.
Okay.
I love you
I
guys.
turned it up a little more.
Well, at least somebody does, eh?
It's awesome. It's so awesome.
Where I still don't see that link, Eric.
Moss,
Yes?
get your cursor out of there.
My cursor is not there.
I got
Eric,
mute.
don't wind him up today.
There's your link.
That's not where the link goes.
We're doing good. We're gonna be all right.
I'm loving this.
That's where the link goes.
This is what they call great radio.
This is content right here. This is what people really want to see.
Yeah, exactly. This is what you want to see.
You don't want to see me pissed off. I can tell you that much.
Oh man, you should have seen me pissed off the other day. Flipping heck. I was at work and it was the strikes, and so I was acting down as one of the juniors. And basically, it seemed that other people who had to act down, it was beneath them to actually work like a junior. And so they would come to me and they'll say, "Could you do this job?" And it's kind of like, why? Have you tried it? No, I'm not doing that. I'm a consultant. Well, so am I. Why are you expecting me to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pressure
that's-
will either bring out the best or the worst in people.
Can't believe you guys are still striking after all this time and haven't gotten anything.
Well, it's actually in the show notes. Actually, the attendings, like myself, have been offered something, but the juniors have been offered nothing. So it's classic divide and rule. The British are very good at that.
Wow. This one is a mess, Majid.
All I did was cut and paste, man. I did say.
Yeah, well, like I say, I always cut and paste to a text file first and then bring it back.
Yeah, I think that's probably a better idea. Actually.
All right, let me take this
the
part of it
limitations
out.
of
Don't
Collabora.
do nothing. Don't do nothing.
What difference does it make as long as we can read it?
No, I'm
Did
with
not
Moss on
work.
this one. I'm with Moss on this one. It's got to look, vaguely correct. I haven't touched anything. Don't look
Yeah,
at me.
I know. Nothing worked.
Whose turn is it to present, by the way?
Since I seem to be the only one that has a sense of inner peace today, I think it's going to be me.
Let's do it.
It's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
I have another story that I can paste in, but I'm going to wait until it's okay to do so.
Wait until it's safe.
Majid, I
Well,
just
no,
tried.
I don't.
I just tried to cut and paste the link so I could get the article, and it says 404 error. This page does not exist.
Huh? This is love Linux and open source.
Oh. Well, I'm going to ignore it.
Yeah, I think Joe.
Hey, Bill,
should do
how
it.
much Irish cream is in that coffee?
0, because I have
Not
to drive
enough.
when I'm done. So, this is Death
All
Wish.
right. Oh, you finally got some?
Oh, I've had some. I've been
Is it just plain Death Wish, or did
It's-
you get one of the flavors?
the one with caramel in it.
Oh, I'm a big fan of the ginger.
I think is it caramel or is it? Yeah.
Oh, that
Except
makes
in
it
the
a
rest of the
little bit
world,
better.
they say it caramel.
Caramel. Yeah, it is caramel.
Right. So burnt sugar.
Majid, I suspect that the last half of the article is missing, but we at least have it formatted now.
We will make up the last half.
I think we should just go ahead and do the show.
Well, Moss, over to you.
Over to me for what? Oh,
The ones,
Uh,
twos, and threes.
oh,
Shit,
okay.
yeah, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, let's get our 3, 2, 1 record. Everyone ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1, record. That's very good. Let's do some zeros.
Audio. Okay.
3, 2, 1,
Zero.
0.
0.
Ooh.
Boy, my form is not looking very big. Maybe I should move in closer.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're good. Take it away, Joe.
All right. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 428. This is episode 428.5, recorded on Sunday, January 7th, 2024. 290 for sets of two. I'm Joe.
Slowly recovering. I'm Moss.
Christmas is over. Time to start shopping for overpriced chocolates and day spa gift certificates. I'm Bill. And you're muted. And you're muted.
Trying to
Off
figure out
to
what
a
else to buy. I imagine.
And not quite ready to go back to normal life. I'm Eric.
Well, thank God for that.
First up in the news, Mint Monthly News. Fedora Asahi Remix officially released for Apple Silicon Macs and others. In security and privacy, nothing. Then in our wanderings, Bill makes unstable. Majid bricks and unbricks. Moss is counting pixels. Joe does a lot. Like a lot. And Eric does some home brewing. In our innards section, predictions 2023 mistakes and 2024 attempts. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. We do have feedback this time, which is always nice.
Yes, and I'm becoming unstable. Not.
No, you
What did
are
you-
unstable.
What did
We
you
know.
say? Makes unstable? Like
becomes unstable.
bubble,
That's what it
toilet, and
says.
trouble?
It says Bill becomes unstable, so you are unstable.
Yeah. Thank you for
Okay.
that.
First up in the news, Mint Monthly News from the Linux Mint blog by Clem via Londoner. Clem started by wishing everyone Happy New Year and thanking them for all the donations. In December, 24,146 was received from 751 people. In addition, Linux Mint is proudly supported by 945 patrons for a sum of $3,300 per month. To become a Linux Mint patron, please visit the link in the show notes. The beta phase for Linux Mint 21.3 has been relatively quiet. 50 bug reports were received and 35 of them are already closed. The remaining 15 are being tackled and preparations made for a stable release and an upgrade path. The ISOs entered QA testing on Friday, so a stable release won't be long. LMDE 6 will receive all the new updates featured in Linux Mint 21.3. This will happen shortly before the stable release. During beta testing, compatibility issues were identified between Linux Mint and newer hardware devices, such as recent AMD graphics, but also wireless chipsets and SSD controllers used in Acer laptops. These are solved by upgrading the kernel series from 5.15 to 6.5. Therefore, a new Edge ISO for Linux Mint 21.3 shipping with a kernel 6.5 will be forthcoming. And if we have nothing to say about that, then over to Majid.
Okay, then. So, going to one of our favorite news articles. Fedora Asahi Remix officially released for Apple Silicon Macs. So this is from the Asahi Linux and also 95 Linux via Londoner. On December 19th, Asahi Linux officially introduced what they describe as the most polished Linux for Apple Silicon Macs. Fedora Asahi Remix is a result of a close multi-year collaboration between Asahi Linux project and the Fedora project. All of the Asahi platform-specific packages are in the upstream Fedora and are fully supported in Fedora Linux 39. All M1, M2 series MacBook, Mac Mini, Mac Studio, and iMac devices are supported. KDE Plasma is offered as the flagship desktop environment, but it is possible to use GNOME 45. Fedora Asahi Remix comes right out of the box with 100% Wayland environment with high DPI support, even across multiple displays with different display scales, and X-Wayland included. With upcoming improvements, new technologies such as HDR and display notches will be supported. Asahi have also pioneered the world's fully integrated DSP solution for the desktop Linux ecosystem using Pipewire and WirePlumber with their in-house Bankstown Bass Boost technology. so this is great news, I think. It also kind of torpedoes one of my predictions because this was going to be one of my predictions for 2024. Um, does anybody know if this is a proper 1.0 release, or are we still beta?
Good question. Let me
Because I
see.
think that that would be interesting to know. Are they saying that because they've said it's the
Well,
most polished Linux for Apple Silicon Mac? So does that mean it is one which is now fully working?
I thought Asahi was still beta, so anything built on top of Asahi is still going to be beta, but I don't know for certain.
I see no version numbers on their website.
Because I just think that would be because maybe too much is made out of version numbers, but I do think it's very telling if a company puts 1.0 instead of 0.8 or
Londoner
0.7 or
says it's a
whatever.
proper release of Asahi.
Okay. Well, okay. Has anybody, I mean, I've got rid of my M1 Mac book. Has anybody else got any M1 M series devices that could try this out on?
You mean buy a Mac?
Yeah, no,
I don't know.
not gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I suppose that's just going to be good news, but nothing that we've actually got any proper experience with.
I'll be more interested in this when inevitably Apple drops support for these devices, starting with the M1 when it came out, and then the Linux side will be basically the only up-to-date option that you've got. And how well will that run, given the fact that Apple is no longer supporting the Apple?
That might take a long time.
I was
Yeah,
going to
Like a
say that's going to
really
be a
long
long
time.
time. I mean, we're looking at probably what, 7, 8 years from now, probably.
right.
I mean,
But
it,
I mean,
the M1 MacBook Air came out in 2020. It
But
seems that these devices last almost a decade.
yeah, but Apple makes the devices that actually do like usually work for long periods of time. I mean, or is still relevant for long periods of time. The 2012 MacBook was still relevant until what 2019, so 7 8 years
Mhm.
of usability, and the screens were awesome, and the processor was decent. Yeah, the RAM was a little bit short, but it was still a good device.
Right.
So I think, yeah, that's the worry that I have with all of these because I have, as I said, having had a short experience with Macs, is that you're always a little bit it's not as easy as it is on, say, a Windows box to be putting a Linux distro on anyway, even if you've got an Intel powered Mac. There's always some complications because everything's closed source, everything's Apple, it's all vertically integrated.
Well,
It just seems like, it's you're going to be having, you basically got to have more money than sense if you think to yourself, I'm going to buy an M1 Mac and I am happy if this completely dies while I try and put on a Linux distro. And
I'm glad you said it
unfortunately,
before I did.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't have sense, and I don't have money either. So I'm losing on both. But yeah, I mean, when I had the old MacBook Pro, I think it was the 2017 one, I was happy to put Linux onto that. And because I thought, well, at least I should be able to go back relatively easily, and it wasn't actually that easy,
Well,
actually, compared to,
now
as I said, Linux Windows boxes. I did not have the cojones to try that on the M1.
now I have a question. Isn't the M1 and M2 aren't they like ARM adjacent?
No,
Like
they are ARM. They
they
are
are
ARM.
ARM. Okay, but I thought they were like Apple's version of ARM.
Well, I mean, they are obviously Apple's custom-made silicon, but they are ARM designs.
Okay.
Fundamentally the structure is ARM as opposed to, x86,
Right.
structure.
And so the instruction set is different, and each ARM chip is other places are different. But
Hmm.
because the M1 and M2 are ubiquitous for Apple, it's easier to get Linux running on them than it is each individual process ARM processor that's out there.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Once we get through and Asahi actually gets fully established, I know Londoner said that they had a release, but it being, I would still say early in the M1, M2 cycle, it's still going to be a while before they're highly polished.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is having to redo it all from the ground up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's hard to polish whenever you're literally building the floor underneath of the house, you know.
Right.
Um, the work they're doing is really reverse engineering, figuring out how to support this hardware without any help from the original maker, which is a Linux forte. I mean, that's kind of what Linux has always been good at. Let's take a toaster and get Linux to run on it. And, because it's not supposed to, first of all, and because we want to.
Well, we need to remember that the Asahi people were the first to come out with a real legitimate Mesa driver for this hardware. They even beat Apple on that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so they're deep in the innards of the hardware at this point. So polish, yeah, I would expect that to come a little bit later.
Eric, you're up.
Yes, sir. GNOME makes new system monitor extension for GNOME Shell. And this is from OMG Ubuntu. Keeping an eye on CPU, memory, and network activity in GNOME Shell is easy thanks to an array of community-built extensions tailor-made for the task. Now a new option is available for GNOME Shell users, one designed, developed, and supported by GNOME itself. Why create its own resource monitor add-on? GNOME developer Florian Molnar explains. A long time ago, we used to include a system monitor extension that added CPU memory graphs to the long gone message tray. However, demand for this type of extension hasn't died down to the point where RHEL includes a revived version of the old extension. In light of the continued need, they've built a brand new system monitor extension. The new iteration is unlikely to suffer from the CPU and memory flaws found in the old version. This extension, like all GNOME made ones, is entirely optional and is not part of GNOME Shell itself. So if you have no use for it, you needn't fret. The reason I wanted to include this and the reason I thought it was interesting is because there's always sort of this contention from the GNOME team and the third party developers who build extensions. They will sometimes have breaking changes and not necessarily give the extension developers plenty of time to adjust to it. Um, and depending on what type of GNOME user you are, you might see the extensions as being superfluous and completely unnecessary, or completely necessary and couldn't use GNOME without it. And I'm in that latter camp. And to me, this just sort of legitimizes extensions a little bit more whenever you have GNOME themselves kind of saying, hey, the community has actually said this is something we need, to the point where RHEL is doing this work themselves. And of course, there's a close relationship between the GNOME Foundation and RHEL. And so it's not too surprising that GNOME would, maybe write this themselves. But the thing I like is, again, this more or less legitimizes extensions, the fact that extensions exist, that they're useful, that they can provide functionality above and beyond just the sort of default vision of what GNOME is. So,
I'm just wondering when they're mad they're going to be when they break their own extension.
That isn't.
It's also been said that there are at least 15 other extensions out there now doing this sort of thing.
yeah, there are absolutely. One of them is called Vitals, which is probably the preeminent one, and it does this and way, way more as well. But you always have that blessing of an official extension versus third party. So
I mean, the thing that I'm a GNOME user. I like GNOME, especially on touchscreens and tab and laptops and things like that, which I've mentioned ad nauseum. I've always been a little bit confused by what the GNOME team's view of extensions is, because you see, for example, you'll see certain videos and guides on the internet talking about how GNOME is customizable. You just need to install this extension, that extension. You can make it exactly the way that you want to. And yet, as the joke always goes, these extensions regularly break. So yeah, I do wonder what's Gnome's vision when it comes to these extensions.
I
Do
don't think there's
they?
a consensus among the GNOME team as to what their attitude towards the extensions should be. I think you'll hear one voice come out and speak either for or against it, and then that one voice seems to like take on the personality of the entire GNOME team, and it causes a lot of controversy. It causes a lot of conversation among people like us, and then another voice will come out completely contradictory. So I think there are people who fundamentally disagree with each other within the higher ups of the development team, and that's what causes kind of a bit of confusion, when we get to talking about these things, because we'll see an article like this one week, and then a couple weeks later we see an article where a developer is saying that we need to get rid of the whole thing altogether. So
I mean,
I
as
think
I said, I mean, I am quite happy uh, with the customizability that GNOME has out of the box anyway. I don't. I've now maybe I've just got a bit older and I can't be bothered to theme and skin things as much as I used to. So what is kind of natively in GNOME is fine by me, and there are a couple of extensions I use, but not many. It's not really a big thing. But as I said, I'm just wondering about it from a kind of, because they talk a big game about design UX. They talk a big game about what their vision is. And so I would have thought to have a consistent idea of, because then if you are like, okay, fine, we're just going to give you a base system and then you add all whatever you want to make it the way that you want it to be, that's fine. Then why don't you support your extensions better? Or if you say, no, look, they do an Apple, this is the way it's going to be, and if you like it, great, and if you don't like it, KD's over there. Then again, that's fine, because then at least you know what you're signing up for. You know,
But even Apple, there are ways to in Windows you can have third-party applications that change the menus, change the structure, change the icons, change, and whatever it is you're interested in doing. And I think really the complication for the GNOME team is for that they really would be in a tough position if they were to officially embrace and support extensions, because that is such a large community of developers, of users, of people who are doing things that are well outside of like the core of what they're trying to do. That, so on one hand it's like, okay, we kind of get that there are use cases, and even there are, System 76 making Pop OS for the last several years, where they rely heavily on their own custom extensions to do things to the desktop. Same thing with Ubuntu. Ubuntu doesn't ship vanilla GNOME. And so there's already sort of this contentious, maybe not contentious, but there's already this definite admission that the GNOME way, or the GNOME vision of their desktop, is lacking, at least in some instances, in some use cases. And extensions are the way that they get from that vanilla experience to what the distro wants to provide to their users. Now it's up to the distro or the developers of the extension to manage that. And if there's a breaking change, oh well, because it's not up to GNOME to support those, and they can't be stymied and stifled. Think of Microsoft, the situation they've been in for the last 30 years of needing to support every stupid executable that was ever created for Windows 95, 97, XP, all the way through. They've had to have this backwards compatibility, and how difficult it is for them to maintain that code base because of exactly that. If every time they came out with a new version, they just had carte blanche to say, we do what we want. And if you guys are doing something that you want to do, well, then it's up to you to maintain that and fix it. If we break it, oh well. And companies like Microsoft can't do that because people pay them a lot of money for that backward compatibility, whereas GNOME isn't in that position. So I think that's kind of the relationship, is that they recognize that some people have a need to extend the desktop beyond what they're comfortable doing or want to support, but they don't want to be in the position of having to be responsible for it.
I mean, it just seems a bit confusing, really, and you just kind of then you're kind of you're I don't know which metaphor to use, but basically, you're not making anybody happy. You're not making the people who want a consistent experience happy, and you're not making the people who want to customize it happy. So,
Well,
what's that thing about, you can only please some of the people some of the time. If you try and please all the people all the time, you'll please none of them none of the time.
it's hard to argue that GNOME isn't the most popular and preeminent desktop environment in the Linux desktop.
Oh no,
I
I
would
agree.
say,
I agree entirely. And as I say this
and
as a
so
GNOME user. I say this as I like GNOME. I just want a bit of clarity. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me.
yeah,
Yeah. I think we've probably beaten that one
it
to death. I think, haven't we? Really?
was good though.
Go on, Bill. You're next. It looks like.
Yeah, all right. So FWUPD, that's the firmware updater, 1.9.11 released with support for new Algo Tech and Luxshare USB devices. Last month, LVFS/FWUPD celebrated serving more than 100 million firmware updates to Linux users, while today, FWUPD 1.9.11 has shipped as the latest update to this open source firmware updating solution. FWUPD 1.9.11 adds improved handling for ignoring recovery partitions during ESP selection, checking for CET and SMAP presence on AMD, that's non-Intel x86 CPUs, faster Synaptics MST device enumeration, and a variety of other fixes on the new hardware. Support front FWUPD 1.9.11 adds support for AlgoTech USB devices and the Luxshare Quad USB 4 dock. An engineer from AlgoTech, let's hope that's the last time I got to say that, I fear it's not, contributed to the new AlgoTech USB plugin for FWUPD to handle updating the AlgoTech ASIC firmware. Initially, this supports firmware updates for AlgoTech's DisplayPort over USB-C to HDMI converter. The Luxshare Quad USB 4 dock support for firmware updating comes via extending the Synaptics MST plugin for supporting that dock. FWUPD previously was targeting Luxshare Quad support, but in version 1.9.11, additional changes are needed around the device, requiring the manual restart after the firmware update to properly complete. And that's good news.
That was a good job.
Yeah,
So
thanks. That sounded like
I think
crap.
no, you did good. You did good. But I think the most important thing and the most impressive part of that, and the reason I wanted to include it, was that last month they celebrated serving more than 100 million firmware updates to Linux users. I have to tell you, using Windows versus using Linux, the firmware updates on Linux have become so easy.
Yeah.
The idea of just Linux popping up and telling me, hey, your Dell laptop has a new Linux or has a new firmware version available, and it's just like, oh, okay, well, that's neat. What's in there? And it even tells you the details. It's like, it's something that we can enjoy on Linux that I just, there are definitely utilities you can run on Windows and different ways you can enable that type of functionality, but it's not something that's just that easily accessible.
Every one of them tells you that you could possibly bork your entire system by installing that firmware update.
Well, they have to tell you that. That all being said, I had to disable it on my wife's laptop because she dual boots with Windows 11, and Windows 11 does not like it when another operating system updates firmware. And then it tries to start.
I've never had that problem.
I don't know what I've got set up differently. It's running Kubuntu, but every time FWUPD changes anything, Windows 11 starts up, and probably because I don't have any of the secure boot or the TPM disabled or anything. And it sees that there's a different firmware version, then I have to go and do that stupid BitLocker thing where you go to Microsoft
Oh.
and unlock it
yeah.
so it'll boot again. And sometimes it happens when I'm on the road and I just can't be bothered with it. So
Gotcha.
it's one of those things that's fantastic for Linux users, but there is these weird edge cases like what I just described. So
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah, it's fantastic that we have this because we went a very long time, in my opinion, without something like this. We're stuck with whatever BIOS version or firmware that we had at the time that we installed the
Well,
software.
and also the fact that it encompasses so many different pieces of hardware. Like
Yeah.
the the one you might have on Windows may tell you that your system has a BIOS update or firmware update, but not your peripheral or not your and the
Right.
fact that a developer from Algotech or Luxshare or whoever can come to the FW up the or LVFS and say, hey, we want to include our hardware in this. Like that's really convenient. Very cool. Sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no worries. But at least it's been a couple of years since Microsoft has, overwritten my boot partition. Yes, that used to be a thing.
And I've noticed that Windows, and it really only becomes a problem when you're doing a lot of booting from USB devices or dual booting and that. But sometimes Windows on an update will change your boot order. I mean, they've got full access to the UEFI, so I don't know. It irritates me, but there's so few machines running Windows in this house and Linux.
I just thought of a story, and I'm so sorry that I forgot to include it. I'm going to let Moss do his, but then I want to talk about, if you guys want to, the idea that Microsoft is adding a new button on the keyboard
Oh
for
yeah,
the first time in 30 years.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Button, who's got the button?
AI, the future.
On to Boss.
Okay, Debian preps ground to drop 32-bit x86 as a separate edition. After a recent meetup in Cambridge, Debian developers are discussing how to start gradually dropping 32-bit x86 support. At the end of November, some of the Debian development team met at a mini DebConf in Cambridge, UK. One immediately visible result is a message entitled Bits from the Release Team on the Debian-Devel-Announce mailing list with significant news. The end of the line for Debian as a 32-bit distro is approaching. Note, though, this doesn't mean that 32-bit support is going away altogether. Not yet, anyway. The news is in a section titled A Future for the i386 Architecture. Insofar as they still do, we anticipate that the kernel D-I and images teams will cease to support i386 in the near future. There's a bit of internal project jargon here, which we suspect bears clarifying. First, i386 is the Debian project's term for what we call x86-32. If x86-64 is 64-bit, aka x64, then x86-32 is 32-bit x86. Simple. Also, this i386 doesn't mean that the actual 80386 from the 1980s, the Linux kernel dropped support for that way back in 2012. Most OS projects now talks about i686, which is generally taken to mean 32-bit Intel chips from the original Pentium Pro or Pentium 2 onward. We suspect that kernel is fairly self-explanatory, although you may not know that the Debian project includes a number of kernels, of which the Linux kernel is only one. The abbreviation D-I means the Debian installer, and images is the project's term for installable CD and DVD media.
Now, I know that we all find that the 32-bit getting dropped entirely is a little bit disappointing, but how many of us are actually still using 32-bit machines?
Nope.
Well, I do know that Debian, that Bodhi is still making a 32-bit based on Bodhi. I can't even think. Based on Debian, and that they are also going to start doing a 64-bit based on Debian that they're terming DeBodhi.
Doesn't MX Linux, isn't that based on Debian
MX.
as well? So basically that'll mean all these things will kind of quietly go away. is the time right for this? I mean, I've not installed anything on a 32-bit machine in years. You know,
If there's a need for it, someone will,
Yeah.
develop it. So, all right. Well, that is it for our news. And according to our security and privacy, we are officially 100% secure.
update your
Do you-
software, folks.
Do you guys want to talk about the Copilot?
Oh,
key?
yeah. I'm sorry. I forgot.
It's
Only
okay.
been
I'm going
like
to
2
stick it in
minutes.
there as. Yeah, it's okay. I'm going to stick it in there as a.
Because this is an interesting story. And I have to wonder what, somebody in Linux is going to make of this button.
I'm just gonna map it to something stupid.
It's going to be my new VLC launcher.
Oh, the stickers that they're gonna make for it. I'm just
Oh, I keep meaning to order those stickers for the Microsoft key on
I've
all
got
my
a bunch of those.
computers.
I've
You
got
should have
Arch
sent some
ones.
when you
I've
sent
got
me that,
Linux
Penguin
ones.
key. Yep.
I wonder if you could map it to a competitor's AI, like Google Bard.
Yeah, I don't know why you
or,
wouldn't.
Or
Mycroft.
Mozilla's.
Funny.
No, Mycroft.
That
What
would
are
be epic,
beans?
wouldn't it?
Really.
Sadly,
yes.
they terminated the Mycroft project.
Anyway,
Oh,
go
my
on
goodness.
then, Eric. You want to?
Yeah, I
about
pulled
this.
it from TechCrunch. Everybody covered it, but so this is Microsoft wants to add a Copilot key to your PC keyboard from TechCrunch. Microsoft would like 2024 to be the year of the AI PC, and to put a point on that, the company today announced a new key for Copilot that is a physical key that will soon make its way to your keyboard and join the Windows key together with its friends, the Control key, Alt, and the Insert key that you've never purposely used. Based on the image Microsoft sent over, it looks like the new Copilot key will replace the right Control key on the standard PC keyboard, where it will slot in between the Alt key and the left arrow key. The introduction of the Copilot key, and this is a quote, marks the first significant change to the Windows PC keyboard in nearly 3 decades. Microsoft's Youssef Mehdi, Executive Vice President and Consumer Chief Marketing Officer, writes in today's announcement. We believe it will empower people to participate in the AI transformation more easily. The AI transformation, wow. The Copilot key joins
That's
the
where
Windows
we
key.
all turn into logical machines.
I'm hearing the Terminator song in my head right now.
Yikes! Yeah, right. Copilot.
Dun, dun, dun.
The Copilot key joins the Windows key as a core part of the PC keyboard when pressed. The new key will invoke the Copilot and Windows experience to make it seamless to engage Copilot in your day-to-day. Oh my goodness.
Not going to happen.
So,
Well, I mean, it will happen. Nobody will use it.
Hey,
The key will be
Cortana.
there.
There will be the
the
Copilot button will be there. It's just that nobody will use it.
I mean, I don't
AI
even use the-
transformation.
I've got the right super button on this keyboard, and I never use that. So
Well, the problem for me is I actually use the Control key on the right
Oh.
side. I use it a lot.
Really?
So do I. Yeah, I actually use the right Control key.
Oh yeah.
But this lovely keyboard here is actually a Japanese keyboard, and it's got 3 extra keys, and I have remapped them to do various things.
yeah,
Nice. Where did you get a Japanese keyboard?
The place you would get one, eBay.
I was gonna say.
Like when I was in Japan, I made sure I bought a keyboard. Oh my goodness. Well, I just, I have to give it to Microsoft for when they go all in on something, they go all in. And, they've invested heavily in, into ChatGPT and OpenAI, and, the way that there was that corporate shakeup at OpenAI, where Microsoft basically was ready
Corporate
to walk in.
shakeup. I think that's a little bit of an understatement.
Well,
It was the craziest shit I've ever
It was the
seen.
craziest 48 hours in the history.
That was
Yeah.
absolutely nuts. I mean, put
That
it
was
this way:
madness.
the Verge had multiple emergency podcasts, each of which was out of date by the time it was published. So, yes, calling it a slight kerfuffle maybe is a bit under understatement. Anyway, sorry. Just
The
No,
problem
I mean,
also
you
was
know,
by the time we could talk about it, it was all old news because,
Yeah.
it took that long
Everybody
to.
had talked about it.
Yeah, basically.
yeah.
so now I can imagine that everyone I know who has a new computer at some point when this key is on there, who accidentally presses the key and gets this thing they don't want, the first thing they're gonna ask me is, how do I disable it?
Is it going to be on
Guarantee it.
like general purpose machines and keyboards, or is it just
All of them.
Microsoft products?
All of them.
All of them.
Anything that ships with Windows.
I don't think.
No, any keyboard that's Windows certified is going to have this Copilot key.
Well, that's
Yep.
me not buying any more Windows certified keyboards.
Well, the first one I heard of, so Dell made a bunch of changes to their XPS line, which is kind of disappointing because I've been a fan of the XPS line for a long time, and excuse me, there I saw that the mock-up of the new one has the Copilot key on it and a really weird keyboard as well. So I won't be buying any more anyway. But hopefully stuff like this will leave such a bad taste in people's mouth, like you just said, like I'm not buying anymore, that it pushes people towards smaller manufacturers. You know, the System 76s of the world, or what's the
Tuxedo, Slimbook.
the one where everybody can,
Entroware
you can
and
the one you can change everything around. I can't think of right.
Frameworks.
It's like,
Framework.
thank you,
yeah.
Framework. Yes, which I'm seriously considering Framework for my next laptop because it is cool and they seem to have a really good policy with open source and Linux. So
I mean, though, how much different is this than when they decided to start putting the Windows button for the start menu on the keyboard? Honestly, though,
Well,
I
but
don't know.
Max already had the Clover key.
yeah. I mean, we just use it for our own purposes, so we'll just use that
But
for.
I mean, being the first one in such a long time, it definitely is newsworthy from the standpoint of like, that's a big change.
Yeah, it is.
That's a whole systemic change, that's been the same for decades. So, well, good for them. We'll see how that AI transformation goes.
Hey, is the open Apple and the closed Apple keys still around? Does anybody remember those?
No. Why, does one have a bite out of it and the other one don't?
No, one of them was hollow and the other one wasn't.
Oh.
The other one was filled in.
Huh.
I think it was the Apple OE2s
I
that had that
you must
keyboard.
just be older than me.
No, I must have just been using computers way younger than you.
Probably.
Hard to argue with that. All right.
Okay, so now we are finally, officially on to the bi-weekly wanderings. And first up, Bill.
So the holidays are over and it's time to get back to the business of everyday life, such as it is.
Boo.
I didn't have much time off, as it were, but I did have 3-day weekends for both Christmas and New Year. With the exception of 3 Fat Truckers, my podcasting responsibilities have been less than demanding. So I decided to get a couple of things done that's been on the back burner. First, I wanted to master the art of marrying Debian SID or unstable with LMDE6. Hold your hate mail, folks, please. I've tried this in the past with less than stellar results. This time I determined to get it working properly. As a Linux user, I've always seemed to fit more firmly into the category of a rolling release user, hence my affinity with distributions like Arch. And I see now that there's absolutely no way to avoid telling people when you run Arch, so I'm not even going to try anymore.
You run Arch?
Yeah, I do. I run Arch.
Okay.
There, I said it. I finally said it.
Finally, the truth came out.
I thought the verb
Wow,
was
that
used.
didn't take very long for Arch to get mentioned.
Arch
Maybe I should
users.
put that in a prediction.
I mean,
How long would it take for Bill to mention he uses Arch?
there's just no way to avoid it in conversation because every experience I have
obviously,
has got something to do. I
obviously.
mean, Arch
I
users.
use Arch supports in my shoes.
Well, there, you should have been telling us about that. Arch users are philosophically aside from other types of users. So whenever you find yourself explaining your insane methods to people, somehow you always end up just admitting your affiliation. At that point, normal Linux users just say, and then from then on out treat you as though you have Tourette syndrome. Anyway, this time I was determined
Bill.
to die on my hill.
Bill, have you mentioned in the last 30 seconds that you run Arch?
I don't know. How long's it been? Is anybody keeping track? I don't have a stopwatch. Anyway, this time I was determined to die on my hill. After some research, I learned one fundamental mistake I was making was that I was using the commands sudo apt update and sudo apt full upgrade. The second of those is the modern equivalent to the old sudo apt get dist upgrade command, which will not only upgrade packages, but also uninstall and clear from the cache packages apt believes are no longer needed. That's maybe an oversimplified way to describe what it does. The Debian documentation suggests not using this command when using SID because it can cause instability. And they are right. When I tried this back in the LMDE 5 days, I ended up with a broken system with half of Cinnamon gone. This time I avoided the potentially destructive command, and everything is brilliant. For all intents and purposes, I've recaptured some of what I love about Arch while also keeping the Mint tooling and securing my place as a Mint user. That same lizard brain that likes using Arch, Nextcloud, Jellyfin, and Docker will not allow me to be a host of mintCast without actually running Mint. I'm told it may be an indicator for OCD. I don't care. It's my world, and I'm living right here. The thing that I like best is the access to up-to-date content creation software without the use of any containerized so-called universal solutions, which, with the exception of OBS Studio, all seem to be half-baked and in lots of ways somewhat broken. These are opinion, folks. Just calm down. One potential pitfall I am slightly concerned with is the Debian freeze, which occurs just before a stable release to keep the package repos steady in line with the image creation schedule. I'm not really aware of how long this freeze usually lasts, and I've heard some say it can be a potential worst-case scenario situation if a vulnerability materializes. This is because if a problem arises during the freeze, the patch won't get merged until after the end of the freeze. The same is true for Debian testing branch as well. Time will tell if this is a solution I can commit to for the long term. I will definitely comment more on it in the future. One other thing I wanted to get done was my daughter's laptop. She's been running Windows 10 on her 15-inch HP Omen with a 6th generation i5. Although this machine has both Secure Boot and TPM 2.0, it is still blocklisted by Windows 11. This is where Ventoy enters the story. With Ventoy, you essentially create a bootable USB thumb drive with their tool. It can be done on Windows as well as Linux. Then you put whatever ISOs you want on the drive. In this case, I put both Windows 10 and 11 on the drive just in case I couldn't get 11 to work. I could at least give her a clean new install of Windows 10. Ventoy has an option made just for 11 where it bypasses the automatic check to see if the machine is eligible for the OS and gets straight to the Moss eligible for the OS and get straight to the installation. Everything working perfectly, and now she is enjoying a much better experience for her gaming. And it did work. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Ventoy in the check this out because it's not 100% clear in the beginning how you get past it. It also offers offers an option to skip over signing into a Microsoft account, but you got to know how to get past that, and it's not immediately clear how you do that. But anyways, I got it working for her, and I also replaced the combination 128 gigabyte NVMe drive and the 1 terabyte spinning Rust with a brand new 2 terabyte NVMe, and upgraded her 8 gigabytes of RAM to 32 gigabytes. She went from having a noticeably weaker machine as compared to her brothers to one slightly superior in terms of storage capacity and available RAM. And I added this yesterday because yesterday morning I transplanted the server that's running the Jellyfin instance, 3 of the websites I administer, my audio bookshelf server, and the reverse proxy that sits literally between the internet and all of these services. I got up at like 4:30 in the morning and started doing this, thinking it would be the best time to do a machine transplant, and almost immediately got a message from Londoner saying that our website was down and the Nextcloud wasn't working either. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. He's on the other side of the earth. The reason I did it was because the tower, my Dell PowerEdge T40, it was one of the noisiest boxes I've ever ran. So I ordered an Antec P101, which is an absolute beast of a tower. It's this thing sitting behind me that looks like a refrigerator. It's about a third bigger than the ThinkCenter, and prior to this ThinkCenter was probably about 3 or 4 inches bigger in both directions than the Dell tower it came in. And you see how much bigger this thing is. Another great feature is that all of the walls are lined with sound dampening, and it comes standard with 8 3.5-inch bays, which is probably part of the reason it's so big, is I can put 8 drives in it, though I'm only using 3 of them. But that's still, I'm able to separate them and get good airflow. But it's just dead quiet. It's got 4 fans running, and you've got a switch on the top where you can change the speed of the fans. And it's got, like, if I open the door right here, there's like a screen I can pull off and then wash that screen off and put it back in and keep the fans somewhat clean that way. But it's just silent. That other thing was just driving me nuts. In the near future, I'm going to order another one and then transplant this one as well. That way there's 2 of them the same size there. Anyway, that's what I got going on. What you got, Joe?
Well, new drinking game. Try not to die. Every time one of us mentions Arch, take a shot.
Ooh, I got to get some whiskey.
All right. Now, I have done some more messing around with Android and have a couple of different things to talk about in that regard. I was having some issues with hooking up a Bluetooth keyboard and touchpad to my phone, and I really wasn't sure why. I've hooked them up to it in the past, but I have a lot of devices that were remembered in my Bluetooth list due to the amount of headphones that I test. I looked up several fixes for the issue, but the one that ended up working for me was resetting the network information, which did clear all of my Bluetooth items, which probably needed to be done, and also all of my Wi-Fi networks, which was not needed. It is good that I can now use a Bluetooth keyboard and touchpad and can hook up the headsets that I use the most. But yeah, putting back in all the networks as I come across them has been fun. I've also still... Oh, it all moved. I can't see anything. I'm not saying it was you, buddy. Okay. I've also still been using Dex when I can at work, but something that I have noticed is that it is very hit or miss if the touchscreen will work on the second monitor. A few times it has worked, and a few times I get nothing. I have tried disconnecting and reconnecting. I have tried to restart. I have tried different cables, and I'm not sure what actually causes it to work or not. Makes it really hard to test and really hard to fix. But the separate...
What device are you using for Dex? Is this your Note 10 still?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So you're connecting it to the second screen via USB, am I right?
Yes, that is correct. That one is micro.
Okay. I'm just trying to think why the touchscreen wouldn't be working. That's all.
Yeah, it's hit or miss on whether or not it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I've tried different cables. That doesn't seem to help. Disconnecting, reconnecting, turning everything off, turning it back on, restarting. It's just completely random whether or not the touchscreen works.
How big is the second screen you're using?
It's what? It's a 8-inch screen, 9-inch screen. It's
Okay.
barely bigger than the phone, but it is
Okay.
still helpful.
Okay.
When you
Like-
say
like I-
random, you mean it's the same device randomly
Yeah.
works and doesn't work, or some?
Correct. The touch screen on the device on the second screen.
But it's
'Cause
the,
it-
it's the
Okay,
same
I see,
screen
I
you're
see.
talking about, just whether or
Right.
not.
The second screen that I hook up to my phone has a touch screen,
Right.
and sometimes that touch screen works, and then sometimes it doesn't.
But it's always the
And
same
I'm not
screen.
certain why. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder whether Android in the past, and especially Samsung's One UI, whatever, had it used to have kind of like the problem that old Windows installs used to have, registry things getting added and cruft will get added and it would just slow down and you'd get random errors and whatever. And I remember that was when I stopped buying I remember I buying the Galaxy S8 and after 3 months thinking, shit, I need to factory reset this because it's just slowed down so much. And then I thought, you know what might be better? Not buying another Samsung. I mean, admittedly, I have bought Samsung since, but I mean, that was one of the reasons that I, changed brands and, try lots of different things now as it is. Now, Samsung has got a lot better at that. And Android has got a lot better at that in general. But it's interesting because the reason why I've been asking questions about it is because my main phone at the moment is a OnePlus 11. That's my home, as in my my personal device, and I've started noticing that jank come up and the kind of random slowdowns and stuff like this that I remember from about 4 or 5 years ago on Samsung devices. So I suppose there is still, if you keep something for long enough or something that's not optimized for long enough, I suppose, you will get a bit of gremlins in the back, I suppose. Because I mean, the Note
And
10
yeah,
is what, 4 years old now?
it's like 5 years old now.
Okay.
4.5, I think, because I got it when
Okay.
it first came out, and I know that they just stopped sending updates out to it. But yeah, I haven't done a factory reset on it since I got it, so maybe
Okay.
maybe that would help. I don't know.
How
But
fast how fast does Dex work with it? I mean,
really quick.
is it pretty quick?
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Oh, good.
I would say that the slowdown on that is actually the screen turning on when you plug it in because it's also powered from the hub. So
Okay.
I've got the exact same phone Joe has, and I use the Dex, although it's a slightly different configuration because what I've got is basically one of those cables. It's HDMI on one end and USB-C on the other, and then I just run that to a TV because I'm just using it to play content, and it works brilliantly for that. So you've got to use the phone itself for the input, which is
well,
it is what
I
it is.
I also have another screen, but I think that's further on in my talking that I will get to that has some issues, but I think it's related to it being a lower cost device. So, but yeah, even with that smaller screen and being just barely larger than like the size of my phone, I can adjust the scaling on that separately to make things a little bit bigger on that screen, and the deck setup allows me to do split screen, so I can do some multitasking at work. It doesn't violate any of my work policies because it's literally my phone on another screen. So I do like it. It's just quirky here and there. So I moving on from that, I finally did the work and put that M.2 hard drive into my server to replace the SSD that was there. I think I bought it like 2 years ago and then just hadn't done it. So it went from a 500 gigabyte to a 1 terabyte and greatly increased the read-write speed. The startups times are just brilliant. At the same time, I also received a very powerful graphics card from Bill. Thank you, Bill. So that also went in since I was doing a nuke and pave anyway. The reason that he sent it to me is because my old card was starting to go out. A lot of graphical issues with Chrome and with transcoding with Plex. Now, this is an older graphics card that Bill sent me, but it's still extremely powerful. What was it? The Fire Pro 7100?
Yeah, W7100, I think.
Yeah, W7100. Now, I was able to get it set up with no real issues at first. The only problem that has come up is that there are not any OpenGL2 drivers available for it, and this has meant that I cannot run certain applications, but I will get back to that. Now, before the hard drive replacement, I was able to use the built-in backup tool from Mint to try that out and see how well things worked. I backed up my entire home directory using the tool and also was able to back up all of my applications. I did this because I really wanted to test out the restore process. The install went really well with the latest stable version of Mint. The restore went okay. Most of my applications were reinstalled so long as they were in the main repos. This meant that I had to manually install some of my applications, but for even most of those, the restore at least preserved my user data and settings. Of course, there are some that did not, such as Plex and Audio Bookshelf. I am still going to try and do a further restore of my Audio Bookshelf since it takes a lot of work to manually fix all of the matches. And since I have the old hard drive, all of that data will be there, even if I can't find it in the backup that I made, because I also just manually backed up the entire home. Now, there were also quite a bit of resetup required with Nextcloud and all of my file automation, but none of that was, excessively difficult. Just, repointing or reinstalling Nextcloud and repointing it to the correct folders. Now, with the new graphics card, I was pleasantly surprised with how good Borderlands 2 looked playing from Linux on the card. None of that, spending an hour trying to load the drivers. Now, much cleaner than the old one and nowhere near all the delays with opening. The only issue came up when I tried to run the app image for Cura, which threw an error about OpenGPL2. Now, I did try to fix this by manually installing drivers from AMD, which did not install the way that they should, and I had to purge those changes. Thankfully, I still had an older version of the app image for Cura, which does not require the OpenGL2 drivers. Also, with the attempted install of the AMD drivers, it broke my VM. Now, I tried to make sure that I have a good backup of my VM at all times, and I did a full backup right before the nuke and pave. I had VirtualBox 7, which had worked for a little while before the driver's gaff, but afterwards it was throwing errors indicating that some of the helper tools were the wrong version. So I ended up purging VirtualBox and installing version 6.1, which got everything up and running again, which is what I was using on the old install. Next came an issue with, well, I thought it was my USB switcher that was the problem. This is the device that I use to switch my keyboard and mouse back and forth between my work computer and my home computer. It would start out working just fine on a restart, and then one of the times that I would switch back, suddenly it would not connect, and I would not be able to connect any new USB device to my system. I tried switching out the cables, switching out the hub, even found a script to disconnect all the USB devices and reconnect them. Swapping sides on the switch, nothing worked except for restarting the entire system. But everything always worked fine on my Windows work computer. Now, I tried going into Solaire and disconnecting and reconnecting the mouse, and one time when I restarted the system, it showed that the Logitech receiver was causing an issue. In the end, I think that it was the new version of Solaire or some configuration change that I made with the new version of Solaire that caused the issue, because purging Solaire fixed the issue entirely. No problem since then. Now, I was on the New Year's HPR show, but for much less time than I would have liked. I really enjoy being on the New Year's HPR show, and I only got on there for an hour or two. But that's it's because my dog Dices her health took a turn for the worse, and she died, and I just couldn't be on the show. And now I had also had my first follow-up appointment since I started taking TRT. My testosterone numbers are actually worse. Like they went down by 100 points. The doctor doesn't know what the heck is going on, but we have upped my doses for now and scheduled another appointment in 3 months. I also need to up the amount of cardio that I do and see if that helps improve my HDL. My LDL is within acceptable range, but my HDL is excessively low. Of course, moving on, it wouldn't be my bi-weekly wanderings without headphones and 3D printers. My 3D printer needed a bit of a tune-up, so I tightened all the belts and had to tighten the mount for the extruder. I also replaced the nozzle with a new one as the old one seemed to be partially clogged. With the switching to the older version of Cura, I also needed to go into the settings again and make sure that the fan speed was set to 50% because of the fan cooler that I have on there now. This has greatly improved my print quality again. I have done a few prints since then, including a replacement PC slot cover, a buckle, and a sliding handle for X-Acto knife blades. The buckle I am planning to probably reprint after a bit of a redesign. There are some parts that I think could use some bulking up in order to make them a bit more durable. I also may scale it down for some of the applications that I have it in mind for. So that's my 3D printer. I'm quite happy with how it's performing now. A coworker has handed me a pair of Sony WH-1000 XM3s to try and fix, and they are a pain in the butt to work on. They're not hard to take apart or anything, but the fault is intermittent, and every time I take it apart and work on it, it starts to work again, only to stop a short time after I put it back together. Obviously, it is a short somewhere, but all the wires are well separated, and it is hard to tell where the fault is. I'm going to have to start peeling back shielding to find anything, and I know it's going to probably cause more problems than it solves. Granted, the thing is broken anyway, so what's the difference? What am I going to do? Make it more broken? Now, I did also get another portable screen. It was an 11-inch portable screen for Christmas, and I've used a tablet mount to put it on my chair in the garage. I've used it for my phone since it also has a touch screen, which is the main purpose that I had in mind for it, but I also decided to set up one of my Pi Zeros with a USB hat and RetroPie. I will say that it requires a special cable to hook to my phone, like USB-C on one side and like, Thunderbolt 3 on the other side to properly connect. So I can only use the cable that came with it. And if I'm only using USB-C instead of an adapter to HDMI, then it cuts out and it cuts back in. Even if I use a powered hub, it cuts out, it cuts back in. So I'll just continue using the adapter for it. Now, my other portable screen doesn't have that issue, but it only uses the adapter. Now, for the Pi Zero build with RetroPie, I only put a couple of my favorite games on there so that I can play a quick game whenever I'm not busy. Right now, I am working my way through completing a Super Mario Brothers speed run. So, and probably also, I have Shadowrun set up there and it will be able to run. And that 11-inch screen is really close to me and it's really nice to be able to have my controller there and set up. But I do have to work on my cable management for that. I have not figured that out yet. So right this second, it is disconnected, but I will be hooking it back up again this evening. And that's really all I have. Moss?
So, well, real quick, okay. I'm looking at the Tech Power Up screen or website for the FirePro W7100, and it's saying it supports OpenGL 4.6. I don't know if that's a driver issue then, or I don't know, maybe try the AMD GPU Pro driver.
Like I said, I tried to install the drivers that AMD suggested, and they did not install correctly, and it broke everything.
Interesting.
And yeah, when I go and look at the drivers, it does say 4 something, but it's still considered OpenGL 1. I don't know why. And then when I go and look at what the most recent drivers are, it's like 6 something. So
Yeah. Huh. Maybe it's something we can find a fix for at some point.
maybe everything works. All I have to do is the older version of the app image for Cura works fine. If I come across any other OpenGL2 problems, then maybe I'll start worrying about it. But for now, it's perfect. Eventually, one day, I'm going to need another graphics card again. But I'm not going to argue with free.
Yeah. And that's a fairly good card for the
Oh,
money
yeah,
you
it's
paid for it.
It's brilliant. It is a powerful card. It's just not getting driver updates.
Yeah, I had to look because it's actually showing the same version of OpenGL it supports as my Radeon Pro that I replaced that one with, and so it got me to thinking it's got to be a driver. It's got to be a Linux thing, maybe an app image thing. Have you tried something not containerized?
Not with Cura.
Yeah.
Basically, that's all they do.
Right on, Moss.
Okay. I have my new refurbished Pixel 7 all up and running. Didn't take much, just putting the apps on the phone and logging into them, then moving the SIM card. I'm so glad to have that Moto G Stylus 5G 2022 behind me. I had to cancel my annual trip to Atlanta so that I could take care of my wife who is recovering from knee replacement surgery. If I were in Atlanta, I wouldn't be here today. I am quite clearly missing being at the convention, as being around so many friends playing so much music sets the tone for my year. Suzanne has the other knee scheduled for early February, so we'll be at this for a while, and I can't work during this period. The 2016 System 76 Kudu 3 that I got from listener Jackie Moore years back has finally had a hinge break, also breaking some of the bezel on the screen. I'm planning on sending it to Joe for rest and recuperation. I now have the box and the padding all together. I just haven't packaged it up yet. The good news is I finally got her to use the Lenovo ThinkPad T590 I bought her almost a year ago, although it does not like her monitor the same way the Kudu did. I'm trying to talk her into getting either the Lenovo ThinkCentre Tiny or the equivalent HP machine, both of which continue to be very inexpensive on eBay. With the Kudu, when she'd open the lid, nothing would happen on her monitor. And when she closed the lid, nothing would happen on her monitor. And with the T580, it blanks out for like 3 seconds each time. And it's already set to do nothing, quote unquote, but it's not doing nothing. Let's see. Jackie also offered to sell me a Pine Tab 2 at a very nice price, but my wife put that on hold for now. I hope I can loosen the purse strings up soon. I did spend quite a few hours on the HPR New Year's Eve show, although it was much less satisfying than previous years, as there were rarely more than 3 people actually talking, usually more like 2. Last year, there were like 3 times as many people in the room at all times, and it was not that satisfying of an event this year. That's
Really
about all I
strange.
have. What?
It was just really strange. I kept trying to join, and I heard you and someone else speaking for a few minutes, and that was on my phone. And then I tried to get to my computer. When I came here to join, I joined via the link that was in the announcement, and it showed people in the room, but nobody was talking. All the microphones were blanked out, and I have no idea why, but I couldn't hear anyone or anything from that
There
point
were
forward.
large periods of time that nobody was saying anything. They were just
Oh,
there holding
okay.
space.
Okay, well, maybe I just kept joining at the wrong time, but I joined probably 10 different times over that period, and yeah, there was just nothing, dead air. And so it was like, okay, well,
Yeah,
I
it
I
just
thought I
was
was
not
having
the
a
same.
okay. Yeah, I just thought I was having a technical problem, but that's a shame. Okay.
All right, Majid.
Okay, so I've not been here for the last couple of weeks, so I suppose I've got a few more wanderings than usual. I got the MetaQuest VR 2 in a Black Friday deal. That's how long it's been since I've been on. to be honest, it's good, but it's a bit superfluous. Everything on it costs money. You want to play a game, £15. You want to do this, another £5, £10 this, whatever. Obviously, it's very much a they're making the money on the content type of device. And for it is much easier than other VR things that I've used in the past. I remember using the original PlayStation VR 6-7 years ago now. It's still a little bit of a headache, getting it up and going. So I'm actually tempted to. It's still within the extended return period, actually. So I might send it back. Although my daughter really wants me to keep it. Part of the way that I'd convinced myself that when I bought that it wasn't a waste of money was that I could say to myself, well, at least I can watch TV on it. Well, our main LG 43-inch TV started dying, and so I looked around to see if there were any good Boxing Day sales around. And I managed to pick up a Hisense. I've never heard of the brand before, but I think it's a Chinese make. 55-inch, 4K, ultra high def, all the smarts things in it for about $300, which I was quite impressed by. Good screens have become cheap, it seems, and cheap screens have become good. Will it have the longevity? I don't know. I mean, that LG had lasted what, 8 years, I think. Sounds about right. 7-8 years. Maybe this won't last as much, but for the price, I'm not going to say no to that. I've finally given up on Linux on a phone. After bricking a OnePlus 6 and almost bricking a Pixel 3a, I've decided I've not got enough. I do not have the patience for this or the cognitive bandwidth. The biggest issue seems to be downgrading to Android 9. So I was trying to get UB ports, well, Ubuntu Touch, onto it, and one of the first, and it has its own installer that you can download, and it works as a flat pack, and it doesn't know it works as a snap or as a deb package. But the thing that it wants is that it wants you to downgrade your device to Android 9. Now, considering that the OnePlus 6 was on Android 11 when I got it, the Pixel 3a on Android 12, this was not as easy as I anticipated, and I thought actually I definitely did destroy the OnePlus 6, and I've had to just get rid of it. And I thought I'd also destroyed the Pixel 3a in the process as well. I was, however, able to unbrick it, if you want to call it like that, with the help of some people on XDA developers. And so I am now on principle going to leave this, because if you have to run through all these hoops, and okay, maybe I'm not the cleverest guy in the world, but I like to think that I know a little bit about technology. And if I'm having all these problems, then it's just not ready for prime time. And it's never going to be ready for prime time if this is the things. One of the other things I bought in the Black Friday sales was a GameSir X2 controller, which basically, so it's, like the Switch has the the controllers on the sides, and there's a screen in the middle. So this basically works like that. You put your phone into it, and you've got the controllers on each side. And I played a few new games on it on my main phone, which is the OnePlus 11. But now that I've unbricked this Pixel 3a, which is I suppose extra in the house, I've thought of using it as like a dedicated Android games console. It's a bit too old now for a lot of the kind of high-end games, but it runs emulations really well. So I'm using it as like a kind of like a retro console. Been putting on some old SNES ports, Street Fighter 2, things like that, which has been good fun. I'm trying to see if I can get a PlayStation 4 emulator, because those games might be reasonably. No, you don't reckon?
The best you're going to do is PS1.
Really?
On that device, the best you're going to do is PS1.
Oh, okay. I thought, PS2 maybe?
PS1.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. No worries. So I don't, in the same way that Bill never mentions the fact that he uses Arch, I never mentioned the fact that I, did a whole iPad Mac experience thing back in 22-23. And, it was a fail, as I've discussed here ad nauseum. I don't want to necessarily go over through all of that. The TLDR, I suppose, being that tablets can't do laptop stuff as well, and laptops don't have the best battery life for tablet type stuff. And yes, I know the M1 MacBook Air had great battery life, and I did like that part of it, but the OS was a bit too limiting for a fast nerd like me. So the idea came to me whether an Android stroke Samsung ecosystem might work, since the Apple one didn't. Um, the work phone is a Galaxy S22 Ultra. And so I thought, if I get a Samsung tablet which supports DeX, maybe this might work. I'll get a kind of, unified ecosystem thing, see if Samsung's is anything like Apple's, whatever. I managed to get a Samsung Tab S6 Lite, which is the 2022 version of it. So slightly newer, off eBay for about 200 quid. I got a Bluetooth keyboard from Amazon. I had to unlock and reset the machine myself, though, because although it had been factory reset by the seller, it still wanted the original lock code. So this, I think, is a thing that
It's actually a Google thing. It's not an
yeah,
Android thing. It's a Google lock that they put on there, that the person didn't reset it correctly or whatever to allow it for resale, and
yeah,
so they wanted them to log back into it.
yeah, which is what they wanted to do, and the seller kept on saying, "Oh, I don't know what the pin is," and this, that, and the other. Even when I threatened, look, I'm going to return this or whatever. In the end, I found some software to bypass it myself, and I set it up, and it's working fine. But I haven't pushed it too much. I think maybe it's a little bit underpowered, especially when you put it into DeX mode. It becomes into a kind of slowish laptop. And Android as a tablet OS isn't as limiting as iPad OS was, and I can still use it like a normal laptop, I suppose, especially with the DeX mode. But it's still early days. Um, I do sometimes wonder whether, though, all of this is just a little bit me being a bit of a curmudgeonly old man, and whether it's all a little bit foolish, really. The reason I say that is because I've recently joined a Islamic organization, and we needed to make some posters advertising events. The other guys aren't so techy, so I was asked to make it, and I thought this would be get my laptop out, or maybe use my desktop machine. I remember, it's been a while since I've used it, but I used to use Scribus, which is an open source tool for making these kind of posters and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought, since I'm on this now Samsung experiment, as it were, I tried this out. And so I thought, well, let's see what kind of apps there are out there for making posters and this, that, and the other. And I was basically able to do it all in about half an hour on my smartphone. So not even on the tablet. I didn't even have to load up on that. The S22 Ultra, the S Pen came really in handy, and I was able to make it within 20, 30 minutes. And the guys were very impressed, and this, that, and the other. And made me wonder whether maybe I need to wake up and smell the coffee a bit, and not try and shoehorn my old kind of antiquated workflow paradigms and new hardware, instead of trying to make whether it's the iPad or whether it's a Galaxy Tab or whatever, work more like a laptop. Why don't I just find different ways of doing things? Because it was so easy and so intuitive, and the pen, as I said, came in handy. But even if I didn't have the pen, it still would have been really easy. So maybe maybe, as I said, I just need to wake up to 2024, really. Christmas is quiet for us. We don't really celebrate it, to be honest. We've got 2 Eids in the year, and the kids get enough presents for that. I'm not buying another load of presents for anything else. But we do spend a bit of family time. Went to my mother's. Sister came round, that kind of thing. And we had planned a holiday initially, but we've had some recent bathroom and other DIY mess ups in the house. We had workmen around, and obviously I had a much lighter bank account. Yeah, which is going to get even worse, actually, because January, the worst month. Anyway, the NHS strikes are still going on. The senior doctors, like myself, yes, I know it's hard to believe, but I am one of the attendings. I've been offered a pay deal, but the juniors haven't. It's the classic British divide and rule. I've got to be honest, I probably would actually go for the pay deal. It's not, I can see that I'm being played, but at the same time, it's still it's a reasonable-ish offer. Can't, I'm not gonna. Anyway, I don't want to get into the intricacies of NHS contracts, but it does work out good for me. Although, as I said, I know exactly what the government is trying with this. I've been relatively quiet on the distro front. I've still got Ferron on this desktop, and I've got Ubuntu on the work laptop. Manjaro is still on. So yes, Bill, I can say I use Arch as well.
Well
But
done.
yes, but I use that laptop less and less because battery life is pants. Even on Windows, it's just not very good. It's a bit embarrassing. It's got fun. It's a lovely screen. It's an Asus ZenBook. It's got a beautiful OLED screen and all that sort of jazz. But yeah, the battery life is terrible. I'm going on a spiritual retreat in Morocco in January, so unfortunately I won't be on the next episode.
You're going to make another earthquake happen?
Oh, bloody well, I hope not. I mean, to be fair, it was a month after the earthquake, so I mean, it didn't get me, I suppose. I'm a little bit apprehensive about it because it does sound very kind of teenage backpacky. Like when I've been talking to the other guys who are coming along, they're like, "Oh yeah, we take the flight and then we get in a bus and it takes 4 hours to get out into the where we need to, and then yeah, we sleep on the mattresses in the main hall, and there's probably about 200 of us all together from different parts of the world." And I'm like, okay, I'm a guy that needs an ensuite shower and everything, So I'm not entirely sure. It's character building, probably. That's probably the word I'm looking for. I mean, to be fair, it's only for it's only basically a long weekend. We fly out on Friday, we come back on Monday, and a lot of it is going to go in travel. Let's see. It's not costing me that much either, as well. So yeah, let's have a look. That'll be interesting. I don't want to get too political, but I just wanted to say that the whole situation in Israel-Palestine is really terrible. It kind of shows the cold-heartedness of all of our ruling classes, and I feel particularly bad and helpless about the whole thing. But one thing at least that helps me and deal with these kinds of things is to see what I can do and what I can change. And so, if you can find any charities that affect anybody on either side, please do. It's something that, at least it will make us stop feeling so helpless in the face of all this kind of craziness that unfortunately we live in. Anyway, on that slightly somber note, I suppose I should hand over to Eric.
All right. Well, for me, the holiday season usually means time spent with my family rather than tinkering, and this year was no exception. I haven't done much recently. Like Majid said, I just really on the distro front or anything, I've just sort of been, status quo, I guess is the way to say it. But there was one thing that I was trying to do. I had some downtime where the family was out and I sort of was just sort of sitting around. I had my tablet computer with me and I was trying to get a piece of software for web development set up on my system. And they distribute it as a binary package on either the Snap Store or Homebrew. And I'd been looking for an opportunity to use Homebrew anyway, so I took this as the opportunity to do that. So Homebrew is mostly seen as a Mac solution, but it also works on Linux and also Windows on WSL. But it's essentially another third-party package management solution, so like Snap or Flatpak. Um, and in many cases, it's sort of redundant because a lot of the stuff that's in there is sort of the same. But in this case, this package that I wanted is called Hugo. So static website generator. Like I said, they chose either Snap or Homebrew, and uh, I don't really use Snap, so Homebrew it was. And so basically, it's like any of those other uh, software management systems. It lets you install and update and remove and just manage the software. What's kind of nice is that it um, installs packages to their own directory and then it symlinks the files into like the opt directory so that your system has access to them. And so if you launch them from a command line or something like that, you can interact with them, but that stuff is kept separate. So not only does that keep it out of, mucking your system, but also that makes it portable, and you can choose where you store it and makes it very flexible. So I get the sense that this is maybe more of a developer focused solution, although they do have, Inkscape and GIMP and Audacity and like, sort of Firefox, just sort of all of the standard open source software as well. Um, and I don't think that it's going to overtake using something like Flatpak or even App Image necessarily, but it was easy to set up. I like that it keeps itself separate from everything else, and that way it's not messing anything up. And if I choose to use it and then don't need what it has, I can either uninstall it or literally just delete the whole thing, which is nice. Yeah, so that's really the only thing that I've done from a technical standpoint, and I'm sure January, getting back to real life, that I'll start doing more and more things. But yeah, December is my opportunity to just sort of not do anything that I really don't want to do. So that's it.
Maybe one of our innards will be you talking about setting up Homebrew and using it and the benefits.
Yeah, could be.
Okay. Well, that looks like it for our bi-weekly wanderings. So now on to the Linux innards. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go over our last year's predictions. And I will say I did not do well. First up, Moss.
Okay, I didn't do that well either, but hey, I predicted that there would be at least 2 new distros appear, one Arch-based and the other Debian-based, which someone somewhere, a major podcast or YouTube channel, would proclaim to be the greatest distro ever, and that not everyone will sneer at the thought. One of these will begin to get serious attention. While I didn't see anything like this, I truly am surprised. Blend OS has made strides but has not been adopted widely. I predicted that almost everyone will continue to mostly ignore fascinating distros such as Serpent OS and Nix OS, and that Solus OS will fall into that same level of unimportance. Well, that was good for Serpent OS, but Nix has gotten a lot of adoption lately, and Solus did make a comeback after nearly fading away. The old hands grabbed it and said, "We're not letting this die." I predicted that either React OS or Haiku OS would put a version out which is not labeled beta. Nope, not yet. But they did get to like beta 5 on one of those, so it might happen. I predicted that Distro Hopper's Digest would exceed 40,000 total downloads. That would mean an average of over 900 listeners per episode. That could be easier or more difficult to determine as Google has shut down FeedBurner and we've switched to Red Circle, with which I have no experience. Well, this was too easy. We exceeded 42,000 downloads. We have more downloads than LeBron James has total career NBA points. I predicted that Big Linux will rise to the top 20 distros on DistroWatch by the end of the year. I didn't remember making that prediction, but it was there. I might say the same thing for 2024, but no, it didn't make it. Your turn, Joe.
Well, real
Okay.
quick first, though, the thing with Nix OS is kind of interesting to me because it seems like everybody that uses Nix OS, and there is a lot of buzz out there about that, they're all having some weird problem with something, and nobody is willing to admit that it's because they're using Nix OS. They're just absolutely, they absolutely refuse to say that maybe it's because I'm using this weird esoteric thing. And yeah, I called it esoteric because I tried it and I don't get it. But yeah, that's my little mini rant. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my first prediction on the Steam Deck V2 will launch to much further success. Well, no, it didn't. But the Steam Deck OLED version did release, and Steam has announced that there will be a V2. They just haven't given a time frame for it. So, fail. But my next one, Pies will become much more accessible, and there will be no new model in the main line or the Zero line. Well, that was a fail too. Pies did become somewhat more accessible. You can actually find them now. You can actually get them, but the prices are higher, and that kind of sucks. And there was a new model. The Pi 5 did come out, but there was nothing in the Zero line. And I'm expecting that the Zero line will have something in it this year.
Like what? What would you see them iterate on the Zero?
Just, faster processor, more RAM, still that smaller form factor, probably USB-C instead of the micro USB.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Just an iterative update on that. Better, Bluetooth 5 and probably, ask me that during the predictions coming up.
Gotcha.
Now, we will see, my next prediction was we will see some handheld devices that follow along with the Steam Deck pattern. Right now, there are some handhelds with Windows or Android as the primary OS. I am saying that they will have more with Linux as the primary OS. Once again, this was a failure. This was a completely incorrect prediction, and it was high hopes on my part. Now, we have seen a lot more handheld devices, but they're all running Windows. Yeah, they're all running Windows. So there were a lot of handheld devices that came out this last year from, people that make computers, but all either Windows or something completely proprietary, such as the one for PlayStation. I can't even think of the name of that one right this second. But that was going to flop right from the beginning because you also needed a PS5 in order for it to be able to work. And all it does is connect to that PS5 and stream from that. So, yeah, horrible. And then Londoner had a prediction, and that was Asahi Linux will release a relatively easy install, an ISO or similar image, for Apple Silicon by the end of 2023, at least as a public beta. And
well, he got that right, didn't he?
Yeah, he got that right. Good job, Londoner.
Yeah. We got the Fedora thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought that was actually in the first week of 2024, but still, we'll let him slide.
No, I think it was actually the last week of December. Okay, you know what? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Let's just give him a win. Let's just give him a win.
All right, Bill.
Well, so far nobody's been
wrong.
doing very good. Well, the Raspberry Pi Foundation will announce the release of the Pi 5.
They
was
did.
my first one.
They did.
I humbly accept that point. Ubuntu will drop ZFS on root support for 2304, but will continue to develop in-tree kernel module. That was true, and I think the buzz is now that they're bringing back the ZFS on root for future installs, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So I think I got that one too. If anybody wants to argue that one. But that's where the happiness ends. Ubuntu will begin proper support for ButterFS in the installer, and by that I meant that they would support the creation of subvolumes and setting up snapshots by 23.10, having it ready for the LTS in 2024. And to the best of my knowledge, that has not happened. Now, if you use ButterFS in the installer, of course, you have to go the manual route, and it does. I think it does create subvolumes, but not in a real good way. So, I'm not going to argue that anymore. And then I predicted that Google will announce a new Pixel device based on the RISC-V architecture, and that was
I am sorry that was a terrible prediction. I'm really sorry.
That was a moonshot prediction, is what they call that.
Moonshot, flip it out, with more like a Pluto shot.
So I was aiming at the moon. I hit Pluto. It was no harm, no foul. But that's. I still think that I'm not doing too bad, relatively speaking, though. I don't know.
Yeah, you've
Better
done
than
better
me?
than everyone else, I suppose.
I don't think
I
I'm
don't know.
going to.
Londoner was 100%.
Oh yeah, London was 100%. Yeah, fair point.
Yes,
One out
there
of
you
one.
go. But this year's predictions are going to suck, and
Oh, yeah.
Mine aren't.
that's because nothing is happening of any great interest to me, so it was tough. But yeah, moving on.
Okay, so for 2024, I predict that Distro Hoppers Digest will get free publicity in Full Circle magazine.
That's not a prediction.
Yes, it is. I just predicted it.
That's what they call an easy win, isn't it?
Right?
Well, not yet because we haven't written the ad.
That's called a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's called I'm going to make that happen. No.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's no more out of the way than my prediction of 40,000 downloads last year.
Hmm.
I do not have any need to predict when Linux Mint will be ready for Wayland because the roadmap is there, so I'm not going to make that one. Predict that Bodhi 8 will rebase on newer Enlightenment, finally bringing Wayland to Bodhi. That might not be out before the end of the year, but the announcement will be. And that debodhi will become nearly as popular as regular Bodhi, which debodhi is Bodhi 64 based on Debian instead of Ubuntu. I predict that Gentoo will finally come out with a version which does its own compiling based on selections made in the installation process, and all portage files will be made available in binary.
So you've won that one as well, then, haven't you? Because hasn't that just happened like last week?
No, they have made some portage files available in binary, and they have not come out with any ISOs with self-compiling modules.
Okay. I was going
So
to say
that's as far as I can go. It's all trash, but
you've already got half a point already.
I think it was
Bill?
tough. It was tough this year because there's nothing in the zeitgeist really besides AI.
Yeah,
and that
apart from AI, yeah.
to come
Everything's
up
going
with.
to be bloody AI. Isn't
Oh,
it?
it's going to be awful. But
Yeah.
We should just run our
I mean,
predictions through AI to see what they come up
yeah,
with.
that's what I should have done. Run it through ChatGPT. Hey, can I get some?
Damn, we missed a trick there, didn't we?
I'm not going
That
to do
would've
it. I'm not going to do it. So I made up some I mean, these are dumb. Windows 12 will be announced with a pre-installed Linux microkernel to better facilitate WSL. What I meant by that was that instead of having to install all the WSL stuff after installation, it'll already be there.
But isn't WSL only available on pro versions?
No, I got it working
so,
on a
all of
home
them.
version.
Okay.
Google, here you go, folks. Google will definitely announce a mobile device running on the RISC-V architecture.
All right, okay.
Dying on this hill, kids. This was
You are damn right dying on this.
well, and
Plutonian
it's mostly
hill.
just because I
They will
couldn't find
probably
anything
announce
else to
it and
talk
then
about.
back out.
Okay, Mozilla will announce the.
Genuine question.
Okay.
Why do you think they will do that?
He doesn't. He just really, really wants them to.
Because I am kind of a fan of the idea of a completely open instruction set, a completely open hardware.
Does that sound like something Google's into?
Yeah, I mean,
surprisingly-
haven't Google spent most of the last 15 years trying to make Android less free and open source and ripping bits out and putting their own proprietary bits in? You think they're going to start all over again?
Well,
Come on.
interestingly, though, everybody I hear of nowadays that's running a custom ROM or something is doing it on a Pixel. So,
Yeah, I mean, ironically, when I was doing my little bit of ROMing recently with, it seems that the Pixel devices are the best ones if you want to use it on a Calyx or
Yeah.
Lineage or a Graphene, EOS. I mean, I don't know why. There is a bit of an irony
They don't lock
there.
the bootloader. That's why.
yeah, so
There are other phones which don't lock bootloaders.
Not many.
certainly not Samsung.
Certainly not Samsung.
Really?
I don't know
think
if
it's starting-
that's the only reason that I thought it would be Pixel. I just kind of figured it would have to be somebody that would want to create a device that was more experimental.
I mean, you can get custom ROMs for Galaxy phones.
Yeah,
You
I don't know.
can, but you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to add in root permissions and then put on TWRP and then install.
And
But then
you're
you have to do
always
that
taking
anyway.
advantage
You
of
have to
a
do that anyway.
of a
You have to unlock
vulnerability
the
or something to
bootloader
do
by
that.
giving yourself root access. It's not unlocked. You have to go in there and force it.
Well, so the
And
Pixel one you have to unlock as well, because I did this with the Pixel 3a.
oh, I thought the bootloader was unlocked on that one.
No. I had to unlock that as well.
Okay, so you have to do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But do you have to
So-
take advantage of a vulnerability in order to unlock that bootloader?
No, they
Or-
have it
I
all.
know.
They have it all built in and
Yeah.
and instructions on how to do it.
So there you
Flash
go.
OEM unlock in the USB debugging, and then
That's-
you just
Major difference.
Yeah,
I will
that's
point
the
out
big
that
the big
Pine-
difference.
I will point out that Pine 64 already has RISC-V devices out, both in the Pine tab and in the Rock chip.
Hmm.
Anyway, sorry, better keep going.
Okay. Mozilla will announce the incorporation of some kind of AI functionality with Firefox, and the world will implode as a result, meaning the outrage massive will be mobilized and pitchforks will be handed out at sundown.
You do realize that a open source project has already come out with its own AI model.
Nobody gets shit on like Mozilla and Firefox
That's true.
for making
That's true.
decisions like that, though.
Yeah. So Brave on their nightly, they have their AI assistant called Leo.
Nobody cares.
And there are people jumping out of the woodwork to scream about how we should not support Brave under any circumstances.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I've heard that. It seems a little bit. I don't know.
and if a
I find it
Chromium-based
a bit-
browser makes a choice like that, nobody's surprised anyway.
I do think some of the hate that Brave gets is a little bit more ideological rather than actually to do with the project. Personally, it's people who can't stand crypto, can't stand all that sort of jazz. Maybe people who aren't. Yeah, as I said, it as a project, it seems to work all right for me. It's
Yeah.
been my go-to for a Chromium-based thing. I mean, I do find, as I said, the crypto stuff's a bit weird, and the fact that they're the first to come out with an AI is a bit weird. But as I said, I think anyway. But you're right. Everybody loves shitting on Mozilla.
Yeah.
Because Mozilla is held to a higher standard, which it's probably not fair for it to be, but it is.
Well, if we had something else on the level of Firefox to focus our attention on, it would be different, but we don't. I mean, it's all up to Firefox to maintain their place in this space. Last but not least, or maybe it is, I predict Twitter, or X as we're supposed to call it now, will quietly go into the good night. And I don't know if that's a prediction or a hope of my own, because
I thought I was planning on putting that into my predictions, and I saw that you'd put it, so I thought I'd.
Oh,
leave it
sorry
out.
about that.
No, it's fine. But what I was going to say is that I think it's, in one sense, it already has.
Yeah.
In the sense of being the place for real-time news, being a vaguely reliable counter of what people are thinking, that sort of stuff. I think from that perspective, it's completely gone now. It's just it's just a hate machine now.
It's bad.
You can it's a cesspool. It's the worst elements of humanity, and so in one sense it's already irrelevant now because people have just stopped using it. It's not that they've started using Mastodon or anything, unfortunately, as much or anything like that. It's just that people just don't use Twitter.
Yeah, and I think people is a very small group in our context. People in open source, people who would prefer to use something like a federated system like Mastodon, but the world still exists on X and Twitter. Like all of the media, the reporters, journalism, all of that stuff still takes place on X or Twitter or whatever we want to call it. I personally said no. I quit last year, canceled my account, haven't been back on since. And they've basically made it so that a lot of the information on there you can't even get to without an account. So fine. None of that stuff's relevant to me and I don't care, but it still is the town center. It's still the place where a lot of professional people share ideas and get information. And so it still has relevance. And until there is a legitimate alternative, that is going to be the case. So,
I
and
mean,
I'm sorry, but Mastodon is not it.
no, you're right about that. I mean, Mastodon is the kind of thing that we as techies would go for, and it's not, unfortunately, not really there for prime time. But it's interesting you mentioned about professional. I mean, I'm looking at, for example, the health, the medical care side of Twitter, and it's just not used as much. You don't see it in the same way that it was 12 months ago. And so that's why I'm saying that I think, I mean, yes, it still exists. Yes, it's still stuff there, but I think that kind of reliability that you could be, that you could hope that you could get, as I said, I'm thinking of like the medical and the health side of it. It's the output of it has definitely decreased. I've noticed in the last 12 months.
Well,
Well,
it just feels silly because you listen to like he said, and he's right. The normals are still going to use it. It's being used by the news community and things like that. It doesn't seem like it's going away. But then when you listen to normal podcasts about news or whatever, and they always talk about Twitter, they always say, and hit us up on X, formerly known as Twitter. They say that every single time. You can't just call it what it is without describing that it used to be this other thing.
Oh, yeah, it's like Prince, isn't it? The artist formerly known as Prince.
Right.
It's basically like that, isn't it?
And I don't know. I want it to die. It probably won't, but it's just one of the things that makes... There are things I believe that are embarrassing as a tech enthusiast. The things out there in the world that are being sort of bastardized and banjaxed by the greater community just for the sake of, I don't know, whatever.
The opportunity is that it creates a vacuum and a legitimate need for an alternative, a real alternative, something that the larger world will embrace. I think Mastodon had its moment and it's done what it can do. And yes, there may be a continued small sort of adoption curve for it, but unless they do something fundamentally different to capture hearts and minds, they're not going to, win, if we're even saying that's what needs to happen. But in order for all of those normal people and the media and everyone else to get off of there, first of all, Musk needs to make it worse, which he's doing on his own. So it's going to continue to get worse to a point maybe where they just can't ethically use it anymore, where it's like literally either unsafe or unsanctioned or whatever. And then that opens an opportunity, because think of social media now. I mean, yes, something like a TikTok will come along, but I don't even consider TikTok social media necessarily. How can you have a serious discussion on something like that? That's not what it is. TikTok's about expression, about, showing off, about, making content, that kind of thing. But it's not, that's what makes Twitter different from other social media, is it was a place to have serious, legitimate discussion and exchange of information, which is not what any other social media platform does. And so hopefully then this leads to something else, So if it does in fact go into the good night, hopefully then that means that there's an opportunity for someone or something else to come along and do a better job than what's happening right now.
And to be clear, I've never considered Mastodon as a viable replacement for Twitter or X. I think it's come along and filled the gap that was left by Google Plus when it left, when it went away, because that was the place where the nerdy culture sort of flourished a little bit, I think. And Mastodon has kind of come along and brought some of that magic back, and I'm kind of thankful for that. And that being said, I wouldn't want to use it if it became something that the normal people, because the things that would have to be done to it to make it palatable for the normal people would probably make it less enticing for people like us to be on.
There was news recently that Threads was federating so that it would be included in it, and Threads is just going to be so large that it'll drag everything with it. And it's good old Microsoft all over again.
Right.
Wasn't Threads always designed to be federated? I never understood why, but I remember hearing that when it launched. If anybody else knows anything about that.
No,
I suppose the
not
fact
really.
that we're talking about Twitter and we've talked about it for the last 10 minutes probably does show that it's probably not dead yet, is it? We managed to talk about it for this long.
No, there is that.
Well, they've lost about 1.5 million accounts in the last year that they can verify. That includes about 500,000 that were suspended by them, and you don't know whether they'll unsuspend them or not. But still, that's not a big. That's a drop in the bucket for their number of users. Yeah.
Anywho, looks like it's my turn for predictions. My first ever predictions for mintCast, and they've not been particularly. I've got to be honest, they're not the most groundbreaking. I think more and more vendors are going to jump on the AI bandwagon. I think we're already seeing that. I don't think any of those are going to get any traction outside of Google and Microsoft. What I mean by that is, Bard and Lambda from Google and ChatGPT from Microsoft. I just think that's just the way it is. It's going to be a fad, but at the end of the day, they're the people who actually have a degree of being established. I can't think of a good word.
Yes, but will there be some big scandal in AI that gives them a great gigantic blowback?
Well, that is a good point. I mean, you would have thought the whole shenanigans that happened in December with the firing of Beckman and all that would be quite bad, but I mean, it's interesting actually that you very rarely see bad news about AI. Yet it is out there, things going wrong and whatever. But the zeitgeist really seems to be, as I said, on this bandwagon. Let's see. I think Canonical will release an Ubuntu version with Snap only, and I reckon it'll be 24.10. Now, as of now, obviously, the Canonical main edition and also the flavors come with Snap by default and Deb pack management, and you can add Flatpak functionality, but it's not built in. So what I'm actually specifically predicting is Snap only, that you won't be even able to put Deb packages on.
Snappy Core?
Well, but as a main release. That they put out, and the reason why I thought this was I noticed that because I'm running 23.10 at the minute, and it will run install debs from the command line, but it won't do it from a graphical interface through its software center. You have to go off and get a separate deb package manager, which made me kind of think, okay, so they really want to move away.
They've already announced this.
Have they? Okay.
Yeah. There's on makeuseof.com. They're talking about in 2404. There's going to be a Snap only version of Ubuntu. Snaps will replace the debs as a primary means of distributing. It's called Ubuntu Core Desktop.
And that's for the LTS?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, but it's going to be separate from the actual.
It's still a flavor.
Yeah.
Okay. I think Ubuntu will get an official immutable flavor. Fedora, I've got it.
Ubuntu.
Yeah. So I think that's the next thing that's probably on the horizon. I think Pop! OS will finally release their new Cosmic desktop, which is made in Rust.
Yes.
The reason I say that is because it's going to be an LTS this year, so it would make sense for if they're going to launch something and have it being maintained for a while. So that's where I got with that. This prediction might have already come out already, but we'll have a proper 1.0 release of Asahi, which, as I said, might have already happened already. So there has been some stuff out on the net about the Qualcomm Gen 3 chips. Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chips are going to have native Linux support. So I reckon there might be a very early alpha Linux distro that works with it. Don't know if that's actually going to happen, but that's a prediction. And the other thing that I'm thinking is that there is likely to be new ARM. There are going to be new ARM Windows laptops, that have been slated for release this year, and I think these might actually compete with the M series Mac. So, the Snapdragon X Elite. I think there's an AMD one as well, which is ARM based. In early kind of benchmarking, admittedly that's synthetic benchmarks, but they look like they're going to give the M series Max some serious competition. So I think that's where we're going. Those are my predictions. Not the best, I know, but hey.
Not bad.
Well, I'm terrible at predictions. Always have been. It's just not my thing, but I will play along and just say that a lot of the things I think of it just feels lazy because things are already happening. Wayland adoption, immutable distros, increased adoption and reliance of third-party package systems like Flatpak. These are all like transformative things, but they're also sort of glacial. Like they kind of happen over a period of a long, something like Wayland's been happening for feels like ever. But we finally this year saw a lot of traction, and I think next year is just going to be more of that. And I don't see it being a stutter step. Like I think this is just happening now. So there's going to be so much of that in the upcoming year of if a project doesn't already have a plan to do something around Wayland, they're going to have to. It's not going to be enough to just kind of say, well, we're not going to go along with it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be some sort of somebody's trying to do, be a holdout, but it's going to be hard to fight that tide. Something like System D, in the past. Immutable distros, same kind of thing. I don't think it's going to necessarily take over, but I think there's going to be a lot more like legitimate polish around this is something you'd put on a computer that you're giving to someone because it's so well thought out and designed that it makes it difficult for someone to do something they shouldn't or break it. The promise of what immutable can bring. Um, so, I mean, that stuff's going to happen, right? But I think probably we'll see a lot more as we've seen already this year around AI. But the difference being that I don't know if you guys are familiar with something called Gartner's hype cycle, where basically the idea is that there are different phases that happen in the life cycle of any product or idea or solution. You go through this innovation phase where something there's a trigger for it, there's an interest, and so a lot of resources are dumped into it, which builds this huge peak of inflated expectations, which is exactly where we are right now. In generative AI is sort of the peak of that, where everybody is taking this and shoving it into everything.
So
And
what you're saying is that AI is the new 3D TV.
AI is the new, 3D TV. It's the new crypto. It's the new, uh, you know, web 2.0, like whatever, fad phase tech sort of bubble kind of thing you can think of. That's exactly what's happening. And what's going to happen next is something called the trough of disillusionment, where basically, and I've always appreciated that name, where basically people realize that AI has pretty hard limits on what's possible. Uh, it's not in the realm of science fiction like people are seeing it right now, or have this like opinion of it as being so, wide reaching, and it's going to affect the entire way we do everything in our lives. That's not really true. It's going to settle down, and there will be actual applications. There will be things where it does legitimately transform those industries in a way that they don't ever go back. It just is the new way things are done. We're not quite at that phase yet, but I think we're going to shift into it in a big way next year after this hype cycle dies down and everybody is done, lack of a better way to say it, pissing money into AI to be on top of the, oh, me too, me too, me too, me too. Once that settles down, people are going to realize, well, nobody cares. Like, this doesn't actually fundamentally make it a good.
There's a lot of like big business people that are all in on AI because they want to replace their workforce with something that's much lower cost. So
They're going to
you do
realize that it doesn't do that.
I agree. They will realize that. But it really makes you realize that, they don't value you.
They never have. They never have, Joe. They've always wanted the assembly line. They've always wanted robot workers.
But what are they going to do if, the AI actually does work the way that they want it to, and they can fire their entire workforce, and they realize that you can't have an economy unless you're actually giving people money.
Yeah. Right. Giving money, spending money, like that's the whole basis of, trade and commerce. Yeah, I gotcha. Again, I think because of the way AI is different enough of a technology, it is it's magic to a lot of people, right? The idea that you ask something a question and it gives you an answer that seems to be very well thought out and intelligent until you actually pick it apart and go, oh, this is just like salad. This is word salad. It's just, it looks like it's legit. It looks like this is a well thought out answer, and then it just isn't. Once you
There was
really get
a
into
news
it.
article yesterday about another news article that was supposed to have been assisted by AI, but turned out it was entirely written by AI, covering a murder that never happened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was great news.
So there's going to be more and more and more of that, to the point where I think people become, again, disillusioned with the focus on AI as being the solution to all of our problems, or business having this huge impact. And again, it will have a huge impact on certain markets. I think things like anything creative wise, which we've already seen, coding, software development, graphic design, photography, audio generate, all of those things. But it's not going to completely displace everyone. I think in many ways it's just going to make people better at what they already do. And yes, that means that some people will get left behind. But ultimately, it means that tools will get better. Tools will get smarter.
Like with production support, you're watching batch scripts. Yes, AI could make that easier, but eventually something new is going to break and go wrong, and AI is not going to have any idea what to do with it.
Right.
So you would still have those jobs there, or the AI would break, and it still needs somebody to maintain it. So
exactly.
Yeah, no,
So that's my big prediction for this coming year is that the hype cycle is going to shift more towards the disillusionment end of the spectrum after they've put it into every single thing, and we're all just so sick of it.
But I'm pretty sure that's going to be more like a 2 or 3 year cycle because of the big money going into it.
Yeah, you could be right.
Okay, on to my predictions. I also have to put in a prediction about AI. We're going to hear a lot more about AI, and we're going to see more computers coming to market that are dedicated to AI, and with the goal of making our life simpler. But it won't. Now, I also predict that the Pi Foundation will come out with the Pi 03W, which will be released, and it will be lower cost, obviously, than the Pi 5 is, but not low cost enough to make it worth getting the way that the original 0 and the 2 were. So that's a bit of an odd prediction there. But with the prices going up on all of the Pis the way that it is, I'm really hoping that I'm wrong in regards to the 0, but we shall see.
Joe,
Hmm.
Radska already has a 03W, but it's not a Pi, it's a Radska, RADXA. I don't know how they
I
pronounce
see your link on that, but I want the
it.
Pi
And it's
03W.
$15, so it hasn't even gone up in price.
Right, but not a Pi 3. Pi 03.
Yeah.
An arm is an arm is an arm.
Well,
Oh,
actually,
contraire.
no. Raspberry Pi is Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Okay. Next prediction: Wayland will be even more annoying. That's a simple one. That's a gimme right there. Wayland is going to be annoying, and it's going to be on more and more things. Granted, we don't have to worry about it being on Cinnamon until what 2025.
That's
2
what he
years?
said.
Or-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was right.
Okay, and for my shot in the dark, and this one, it's going to happen sooner or later. Microsoft will soft launch the OS as a service with monthly fees to the general public. I don't think it will do well, but I think they're going to give it a shot anyway. I don't know if that'll be with 12.
I think
Go
you
ahead.
might be right, but I think it might be a little bit more nuanced. It might be a case of the base version of the OS might be free, but the Pro might be one with the monthly fees.
And it comes with everything that they
Yeah.
also charge monthly fees for. Now, it might be something like that, which is why I'm calling it a soft launch. I don't think they're going to do it across the board, but I think they're going to start the process to eventually have it across the board. So they're going to come out with something for an OS that has a monthly service fee. And that's all I have.
Windows 11 is. I've got Windows 11 Pro sitting in a KVM, and it's about 2 years old, and I've never activated it because I'm not going to spend money on Windows. And the only limitation it has is that it will not allow you to do any customization in terms of theming or
Background image.
Yeah, any of that
Yeah.
crap, which nobody cares about anyway. So that would be interesting to see.
It's going to happen sooner or later. I mean, that's the whole way the world's turning, is to everything as a service. So you're paying for it monthly. Okay, and on to vibrations from the ether. Now, I've talked about these vibrations that we have here a couple of times. I don't think we put them in the last show because the last show was so long ago. It's hard for me to remember. I suppose I could have gone and looked and see if they were in there, but I'll just talk about it again anyway. Even if we did, because I know I've discussed it with you guys a couple of times. Okay, now Zen Floater sent 2 emails. The first one was about Easy Tether and the issues that I had previously had with Easy Tether and bypassing detection. So he gave some steps to get around that. Step 1, install Linux Mint. Step 2, get the libssl deb file off of Debian, which Easy Tether needs to run with, and install it. Step 3, install Easy Tether Deb. Step 4, sign up for the $20 a year Google Drive option with Google's VPN. Step 5, go get a new 5G Android phone and turn that Google VPN on. Step 6, establish an Easy Tether connection between your laptop and that phone. With 5G, they cannot seem to notice your bandwidth usage anymore, and Google VPN protects your Easy Tether traffic from being detected by the cell tower operators, so they won't just shut you off. And it works great. A laptop won't use any more bandwidth than your 5G phone would, and nobody will notice. Success. Charlie case closed. Now, I do want to say that I don't specifically use the Google VPN. I use PIA, and same idea. But the only thing I'm missing is a 5G phone. Literally, the Note 10 Plus had a 5G version that came out later, but not on the like first day, which is what I got. So I had like one of the last phones made in that time frame that did not have like 5G built in. So I do need to upgrade my phone. My USB port is going out, et cetera, et cetera. I just don't want to pay for a new phone right now. But I will, as soon as I get one, I will try it out. I'm sure it'll work just like you say, and that'll be awesome.
So you can replace the Google VPN with anything else, and this will still.
Yeah, my guess is that any VPN will do exactly what he's talking about. Now, $20 a year for Google Drive and a VPN is great, but some people would say that, you know, a VPN is passing the trust, and are you really going to trust Google with your VPN?
Nah, no. Thanks anyway.
So until proven otherwise, I'm going to trust PIA for now. Okay, now ZenFloater sent another email, and this was regarding mine and Bill's conversation with CB radios. Now he says, I've been a ham since the 1960s, and I enjoyed you and Bill talking about SKIP, the process of bounding a radio signal off the ionosphere due to the sun's solar sunspot cycle using a CB set. I still have an award for sending a signal at 28.6 megahertz on the 10-meter ham band using 68 billions of a watt of power. Billions? Would that be billions? Or would that be... I'm not sure. Okay, so it doesn't take much power to do that, but it really needs a good antenna. The whole electric semi versus hydrogen-powered semi was interesting as well. Our whole nation will have to bring three-phase power to every residential household for us to all use electric cars efficiently, or even charge larger vehicles like a semi. But could you imagine the truck stop which allows semi-charging? Hundreds of big trucks parked in a truck stop.
They've tried so many new technologies in truck stops with trucks, and the remnants of all of these technologies are left behind in every case. Like the park and view, that was a thing with the TVs and the telephones, and then there was a new thing where you could park under this frame and it would like run a big hose into your window and heat your truck and give you electricity, and that flopped as well. But the things are still sitting there because these were all things that had to be built into the parking lots, you know, and just a crazy amount of money spent on these things that all just flopped because America is... I have no reason to believe in my lifetime we are going to get away from the backwards sort of direction that we've been going with all of the, you know, the technologies that we really use, you know.
It's because it takes political will,
yeah,
and a strong government to enact these kind of policies, and instead our government panders to corporations, and it'll never happen. So,
that's
I
exactly
agree with
right.
you.
So let me continue with this. Hundreds of big trucks parked in a truck stop, and all this 480-volt phase 3 power cord stretching around. How many truck drivers' legs get blown off when it rains? Kevin in a big rig. Boom.
Don't forget to read his LOL there. I think he's joking about it.
LOL. Yeah. And then, okay, his name is Charlie, but there are some previous vibrations that we had also talked about with tablets and stylus support on Linux that I wanted to mention again because I actually did order a stylus and I've tried using it on that, was it X Journal or Q Journal or whatever it was that the writer had
External.
mentioned. Yeah.
Zernal, or however it's
Zernal,
pronounced.
yeah. But I don't know. I think I need to switch from the Venue 11 to the larger Latitude that I have and give that a try there. Maybe I'm just not comfortable writing by hand anymore because I don't know. It hasn't worked out that well for me. I did like the fact that with the active stylus that I could write something and then push the button and then go over it to erase it right then. So I'm still testing it out, and I will get back to that. thank you all for writing in. More people need to. We'd love to hear from you. Do you
Yeah.
guys have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there was in a previous episode somebody sent some vibrations about tablets, stylus support, external, and some apps and things like that. Thanks for all that. I'll take that on board and see if I'll experiment with them and see how it works.
Yeah. Like I was saying, because of that, I did order the stylus, and I have been testing it.
Mm-hmm. How are you finding it?
I'm not enamored, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I will further test and get back to you. Just not my thing, I guess. All right, moving on to check this out. Bill?
All right. Yeah, I put Ventoy in here just because I was so. I think I've talked about it before, but this was the first time.
The fourth time that Ventoy has made it in to check this out.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I think I even did an article on it before Jupiter even was talking about it. We've had Ventoy on this show a number of times.
What I've had mixed results with it, but I have to say my more recent experience has been flawless. I mean, what I wanted to bring up was the Windows 11 functionality, because it's all fine and good to make something that you can throw a bunch of Linux ISOs on there and you can take it and choose which one you want to boot, and it works great for that. But for Windows 11, it uses some registry hacks to get past the first off, it gets past the limitation of Secure Boot and TPM 2.0, and literally just installs. And those are, I love it because those are they're arbitrary limitations, absolutely arbitrary. They mean nothing in terms of the machine's ability to run Windows 11, because I've got it installed now on a 4th gen i3 machine, and it runs just as well as, I think that machine came with Vista or something like that. In fact, better. So yeah, those limitations are just, in my opinion, just a money grab. Ventoy allows you to get past both the hardware limitation, or the hardware block listing limitation, as well as making you, because Windows 11 outright forces you to sign in with a Microsoft account. The way you get past this is that when you run Ventoy, do not give that machine any internet access. So if you're doing it on a desktop, pull the Ethernet cable till you get to the place where it's all installed, and then you can plug it back in. But you get to the part where it asks you, like if it's got Wi-Fi and it asks you if you want to sign into a Wi-Fi access point, you just hit a little button that says I don't have internet, and then it moves on to a screen where it says continue with limited setup. I think it's how it's worded. And you hit OK, and then it just makes you create a local account. And it also skips over all that nonsense about, what are you going to use it for, content creation or media or gaming or whatever. Skips over all that. And then once it gets everything installed and you restart, then you can either sign into your Wi-Fi or plug the Ethernet cable back in, and you've got a completely working, installed Windows 11 with only a local account for the user. And if that matters to you, then that's a good way to get past that whole thing. And I was kind of excited about it because my daughter's computer was the last machine in the house to not have Windows 11 on it. And I really didn't want to have to buy her another gaming laptop, because those tend to be a little bit more pricey. And that one was running just fine. I mean, for the gaming she does, you should see them upstairs. You'll have the oldest boy. He's looking at the big 55-inch TV up there, and then the other two are on their laptops, and that's how they negotiate the whole online play thing, multiplayer thing. and she's able to keep up with them now, whereas before she had some problems with lagging, and a lot of that was either because of the only 8 gig of RAM, and also 128 gig NVMe that was really getting in the way too. But yeah, I put a link there for the Ventoy website. Go have a look at that. Like they said in the beginning, we've talked about it before, but it is an amazing tool for people to get past some of the things that Microsoft tries to put in our way.
All right, moving on to housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram and Discord, or post directly at mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Sunday, January 21st, 2024. There is a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, January 13th, 2024. There's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on Saturday, January 27th, 2024. And there's a link in the show notes to get that converted to your time zone. Live stream information is available at mintcast.org/livestream. And if you like the sound of my voice, you can catch me on a couple of my other podcasts. I'm on the Linux Link Tech Show, which is tllts.org. I'm on Linux Lugcast, which is at linuxlugcast.com. Or you can send me an email, jb@mintcast.org. I do try to respond to all my emails. Or you can buy me coffee on Ko-fi. Link in the show notes. Moss?
You can hear me every week on Full Circle Weekly News. I've got Distro Hoppers Digest coming out rather shortly. You can email me at bardmoss@pm.me. My Mastodon is at zyvala@hosttux.social. I used to say my other contact information could be found at itsmoss.com, but as Majid pointed out to me this morning, it is currently not working. So have fun. Bill?
You can email me, Bill_H. You can email me, bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. My Mastodon is at WCHauser3 at Fostodon. Also, check out my other 2 podcasts, Linux OTC and 3 Fat Truckers. Links to both in the show notes. Majid?
So you can get a hold of me on by email, drmajid@mintcast.org. I'm still on Twitter, X, whatever, as Atypical Doctor 870. Although I've got to be honest, I'm thinking that's going to die soon, as in the account. I'm Atypical Doctor on Instagram and Threads, and there's the Atypical Doctor podcast on Spotify. Eric?
You can also hear and see me on Distro Hoppers Digest and Linux OTC podcast, as well as Linux Saloon and Linux Lugcast streams. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, I can be reached by email at eric@mintcast.org.
Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Bill for our audio editing, archive.org for hosting our audio files, Hobstar for our logo, NetRD for the animated Discord logo, Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions, Bill for hosting the server, which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. And to the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks,
Thanks, Clam.
And Co.
And Co. And that is